Shabbat Shalom, everybody. This is Stephen Epstein, aka Student Rabbi Shmuel Ben Yehoshua, with this week's Torah portion. So this week's Sidra, or Parsha, or Torah portion, picks up where last week's left off. So we have Judah confronting the Grand Vizier, the Viceroy, the second in command to Pharaoh in Egypt, completely unaware that this is his long-lost brother Joseph. So last week, if we remember, Joseph had planted his goblet inside Benjamin's satchel, and of course took it, and they held him up, and they are now accusing him of thievery after giving them a banquet and treating them like honored guests. So in punishment, the Grand Vizier is going to keep Benjamin as a slave. This, of course, would completely break Jacob's heart. This is the second son, who he thinks is the only surviving son of his favorite wife, Rachel. Of course, Joseph had done all this to put his brothers through a test to see if they had really forgiven him, if they had still had any resentment. And now that Joseph was gone, now they're taking it out on Benjamin as the son of Jacob's favorite wife, Rachel. So Judah comes in front of, approaches Joseph and makes a very impassioned plea. He had given Jacob his word that he would take care of Benjamin and he would let no harm come from him. So it is at the same time very emotional, but very impassioned. He says, if you were to keep Benjamin as a slave, as punishment, his father, his old father, he is his favorite son, he was the son of his old age, it will kill him. So please take me instead. Joseph sees this compassion in not only in Judah but also in his brothers, and he can bear it no more. He sends all the Egyptians out of the room, everybody who was part of his court. He goes over and he just absolutely loses it. He turns to his brothers and he tells them who he is. He reveals them who he is. But while he's revealing who he is, while he's telling them that he is his long-lost brother Joseph, he is also telling them that he bears no grudges for them selling him into slavery, that it was part of God's plan, part of a plan of Hashem, to send him there in advance, to overcome the famine and bring his family there so the family wouldn't starve. And of course, there's a very emotional homecoming. All the brothers are very happy. Benjamin is released. Simeon, Shimon, who was also kept in jail, was imprisoned as a hostage, is released. And the brothers go back and they bring Jacob to Egypt, where they will be placed in Goshen. And we'll get to that in a minute. But Pharaoh hears about this, and when Jacob and the rest of the family, 70 souls who come down to Egypt, when Pharaoh hears that Joseph, his Grand Vizier, the one who saved Egypt, is in town, he calls him into his court, and he tells him, he praises his son. He says, thank you very much. He did a great thing. He saved our country, saved our land. And Jacob blesses Pharaoh. And because Jacob blesses Pharaoh, this famine that was supposed to last for 7 years really only lasts for 2. So let's focus on this for a second. Jacob, or in Arabic, I believe it's Yaakov, is the way Muslims pronounce it, really is not God. He does not bless anybody. None of us can. We're mortals, okay? What Jacob did is he pronounced the blessing for Pharaoh, for his kindness to his son, for putting him in such an honored position. So as a prophet, he was able to do this. Hashem, God, was working through Jacob, as God does through all his prophets, and really for all of us. It's really, as God's children, we are all imbued, we are all given the task of repairing the world. We call it, in Judaism, we call it tikkun olam, but we act always on behalf of God. So Joseph has his family, he settles them in Goshen. Goshen was to the northeast of the Egyptian capital. Now, why does he set them apart? Well, for a couple of reasons. First of all, the Egyptians were pagans. They worshipped gods. Some of the gods, and this is the second reason he put them apart from the Egyptians, some of the gods that they worshipped were the animals that the Hebrews, that the Israelites, which is a word for a son of Israel or Jacob, were shepherding. I mean, the cattle, the sheep, those were their gods. And it would have been deplorable and vulgar for the Egyptians to see the Israelites managing who they thought were their gods. So they put them in a separate area, and of course Goshen was a very fertile area. It was right up north in the Nile, right up by the Reed Sea, and it had very fertile ground. It was almost ideal for shepherding and for the animals to graze. So after that, we've got the next year or so of the famine, and basically the Egyptian populace had kind of run out of grain. So now what did they do? Now they go to Pharaoh and they say, we've run out of grain, what do we do? Pharaoh has sold them the grain. They've run out of money. So rather than impoverish the people and eliminate the middle class, hint, hint, what Pharaoh does is he makes them, in effect, his employees. He basically has them owe him for giving them the grain. Now, some people might say, why is Pharaoh charging these people for their own grain? Because where'd the grain come from in the first place? It was the bumper crop, the extra. It went into the granaries. Well, because it was Pharaoh and Joseph's vision, it was their foresight that actually enabled that extra grain to be available for the Egyptians during the years of famine. So basically, what Joseph does is he makes all of these people serfs to Pharaoh. So he also creates an interesting economy. Now, the people were still free, okay, but they no longer really owned their land. They were just kind of like tenants, whereas Pharaoh owned the land. So this is basically how we end up with this particular portion. Okay, there was not a lot going on, but it was certainly very interesting. It was certainly very impassioned. So with a little bit of extra time, I would like to address an issue that I saw on Facebook. Somebody posted where two people are talking. One of the people is a very devout atheist, and he says, if God is merciful and loves justice, then why are, say, little kids born with cancer and die almost immediately? Why are kids born drug addicted? In other words, why is there misery in the world? Well, let's look at some religious answers to that. And the bottom line is that if a religion can't answer those questions, what is it for, really, right? If you recall, some of you from your religious studies, mankind did live in a paradise where there was no disease, no famine, nothing. It was called the Garden of Eden. And our ancestors, our progenitors, Adam and Eve, made the decision to gain the ability to distinguish between good and evil. In other words, they wanted the ability to have free choice, and they ate from the tree of knowledge. So what was this fruit? It's been going around for years that it was an apple. I would challenge anybody to go to Israel and find an apple tree. A lot of rabbis think that the forbidden fruit was really a fig. Why? Because as soon as their eyes were opened and they realized they were naked after eating the fruit, what did they do? They took some fig leaves, sewed them together. Well, they took fig leaves. What did they eat? They ate a fig. But in reality, it was a forbidden fruit. It doesn't exist anymore. It was a fruit. So there are rabbis that say a couple of things. They address this issue in a couple of things. In the Talmud, it says basically that some people get their misery now so that in the world to come, whatever that is, they think maybe that's heaven, maybe it's paradise, maybe it's just the next life. Who knows? So you get your karma out in this life so you don't have to deal with it in the next life. Some people see karma or action, good and the good things and the bad things you do, is kind of a balance sheet. Okay, the more mitzvot, which are good deeds that you perform, the more you get on the positive side. And the bad things you do, that adds up too. Of course, if the good outweighs the bad, well, then you're ahead of the game. If the bad outweighs the good, start giving to charity, start performing volunteer work, whatever you got to do, right? That's one issue. The other issue is that Judaism believes in transmigration. We don't talk about it a lot, but yes, we believe in reincarnation, and maybe this is things that you have to do from a previous life. The other thing is that, finally, they say that perhaps you're getting something bad because the bad thing is going to set you on the right course to do good things, okay? Some people abuse their bodies, okay? Some people don't exercise. They eat a lot of red meat. They eat a lot of junk. They eat a lot of sweets. What happened? They get overweight. They develop diabetes. That's a bad thing, resulting from bad actions, okay? So what happens? They go to the doctor. The doctor says you better straighten it out. You've got adult diabetes type 2. You better start doing something about that. They go out, they change their diet, they exercise, and they have their diabetes under management. So what's happened? You've had a good thing come out of a bad thing. Right? So how do we address this idea of a little baby who apparently has done nothing to anybody? Why do they have this misery? Okay? Again, it could be that they're getting their bad things out, maybe in the past, whatever their soul has been through in previous incarnations, previous migrations, transmigrations. They're overcoming it now. They're doing it, they're getting out of the way, and that's it. A lot of us feel that this is the only life because this is where our awareness is, this is where our consciousness is. So this is it. We don't believe that. If you believe that God created us in his own image, well, God is not a physical being. So what image were we in which we were created? It would have to be a spiritual image, wouldn't it? All right. So if we were created in God's spiritual image and God is eternal, then there has to be a part of us that's eternal. All right. Whether you believe that you die and go to heaven, in Judaism we believe in 7 heavens, each one a next layer of another, or if you believe that you go to heaven and then maybe you come back into another life, whatever it is, what you do in this life sets the stage for that. Okay. So basically, yes, things seem perhaps to be not fair, but of course, as humans, we have limited consciousness, we have limited brains. We can't really perceive with our limited minds what God's intention is. So I hope that answers, maybe that doesn't, but I hope that at least clears things up. Again, Shabbat Shalom to my fellow Jews, to Muslims out there that might be watching this. I guess your Shabbat is today, Friday. I hope you had a good one. And for you Christians out there, happy Sunday, which I believe is your Lord's Day. Is that what it is? So have a good weekend. May it be spiritually refreshing. May you relax. And may next week, Shavua Tov, may it be very productive.